Chapter 16.
Mr. DeClane?
Officer Bartholomew cleared his throat.
Yes?
Basil answered, lugging himself up from the chair.
Officer Harry will escort you back through the perimeter of the yard now.
Officer Bartholomew stated.
Good day to you. Good day.
Basil answered quietly as Officer Harry opened the door.
Well, are you chaps ready for the dirty circus again?
The balding Officer Harry spoke with a smirk on his face. He was definitely more relaxed with his protocol than the other two officers.
Oh, as ready as I'll ever be.
Basil answered nonchalantly.
Well, come with me then.
He grinned, gesturing Basil and Maud to the exit.
Oh, hell.
Maud sighed, wiping his forehead.
Here we go.
Basil, too, dreaded what was waiting for them on the other side of that door.
Single file, please.
Ordered Officer Harry. He opened the iron door, and immediately the air was filled with frenzied excitement again. Wolf whistles and catcalling, clapping and yahooing. It was all there.
Oh, dark horse!
Was yelled in the distance, followed by a rambunctious laughter. Basil did not dare look.
Aye, Hazza, you owe me, mate!
The inmate Georgie bellowed, walking beside Charles, who was eagerly following the fence line, right beside Basil and Maud.
I owe you nothing but a kick up the arse, Georgie.
Officer Harry chuckled. Soon enough, that crowd of flustered inmates grew and grew, and Officer Harry, who was seemingly much more flexible with the yard rules, was willingly engaging with the inmates.
Hey, Hazza, hey,
Charles began.
do you know who this young man is?
He pointed at Basil.
He's me dark Spanish horse. Don't be getting too close, Hazza. He's whining and dining with me tonight.
Basil's skin crawled at the sound of Charles's dirty, wheezing laugh coated with phlegm.
What's your words with this young lad, Charles?
Officer Harry began coldly, stopping in his tracks. He glared at Charles hard in the face.
Charles, you ain't got no idea who the hell this is, do you? Why, he's the nephew of Sir DeClane.
Now, what happened next, Basil was not prepared for. The entire group of the inmates fell silent. Not a sound or murmur was uttered, and their jovial faces turned to stone.
Well, you don't have anything else to say?
Officer Harry taunted.
Huh, I thought so.
They all stared at Basil in disbelief. No more laughing, no more debauched behavior, especially from Charles. His face had become sullen, and without another word spoken, backed away from the fence and wandered to the other end of the prison yard, followed by the rest of the inmates.
What the hell was that all about?
Basil asked, bewildered, watching them as they wandered away.
I have no idea.
Maud shook his head.
Now, as I understand it, Mr. DeClane, you were here to visit your uncle, Sir DeClane.
Officer Harry glanced at Basil.
And he was indeed your uncle, correct? Yes, that's correct.
Basil nodded.
Well,
Officer Harry said,
I thought I should tell you that Sir DeClane, or El Pantera, as they called him in here.
He paused for a moment, as if being fond of the name.
He was on my watch for 4 years.
He turned around and studied Basil's face intently.
I see similar mannerisms of him in you. You do?
Basil furrowed a brow.
Yes, I do.
Officer Harry nodded, walking again.
He was infamous at Fort Denison. If he walked into a room, everyone went quiet. If he asked someone to do something, they would do it. Everyone seemed to like him, and no one ever questioned him.
This baffled Basil.
Why?
He asked curiously.
I don't know.
Officer Harry shrugged.
He just had that kind of respect from the inmates. I had a jolly good job to remind myself that he was an actual inmate, many a time. And he was one of our hardest felons. Even the staff respected him. He was indeed a peculiar man.
Oh, shit.
Suddenly, a loud, desperate call of emergency came through the wire, dangling along the stone wall. Officer Harry snatched a receiver quickly and listened.
Polly! Negative, Polly! You need to repeat that!
Officer Harry shouted through the receiver.
Negative! Negative, mate! Negative!
He slammed down the receiver and turned to Basil and Maud.
Bloody hell!
Christ almighty! What?
Basil wondered anxiously.
What's happening? Wait here.
Officer Harry thrusted a stern figure in their faces and brusquely waddled as quick as he could up toward the exit door.
Bloody hell! I can't believe he's just left us!
Hissed Maud.
Me either!
Basil replied, gobsmacked. 2 prison guards ran to Officer Harry in the distance, looking flustered. Concerned, Basil immediately thought about the greasy inmate Charles and glanced in his direction. He saw that Charles and his inmate friends were huddled around the far corner of the yard, watching Basil and Maud from a distance, sitting on a concrete bench, smoking. Hardly comforting.
Psst.
A voice whispered very close to Basil.
Psst. Don't look at me, but just listen.
The voice continued. Basil was totally caught off guard and couldn't resist the temptation. He peered out the corner of his eye to see an old, yet well-groomed inmate sitting up against the fence with 3 other inmates nearby, inconspicuously smoking a pipe.
I know who you are. You're Pantera's nephew, are you not?
The old inmate murmured, his silver, shoulder-length hair slightly tussling through the dusking air.
Yes,
Basil whispered, moving his lips ever so slightly.
Well, I was his nephew. They told me he's dead.
Basil glanced at Officer Harry, who was amidst a heated conversation with the other 2 guards.
Of course they told you that.
The older inmate spoke, scanning his hand of cards, puffing on his pipe.
I'll tell you a little secret, son.
He exhaled a mouthful of smoke, placing the ace of hearts down in front of him.
A secret?
Basil stammered, trying to keep a straight face. Amazingly, the old inmate boldly turned his head at Basil, piercing him with sharp eyes.
My name is Lazarus.
He stared, his age-grey eyes glinting in the setting sun.
And your Uncle Tsar is not dead.
Basil felt his neck muscles seize up.
What?
He muttered dryly, frowning at Lazarus.
I don't believe you. You're a prisoner. Why would I believe you?
Basil glared at Maud, who was just as floored as him.
Laz!
One of the inmates grunted cautiously.
Careful, mate. Harry.
Lazarus pulled away from Basil's eyes, swiftly realizing he was being watched by Officer Harry in the distance. And then, lo and behold, they all witnessed the quick transformation of Officer Harry's face turning from white to red. Basil's stomach turned in knots.
Oh, shit.
Gulped Maud.
He's seen us talking. Now we're in for it.
Within a split second, Officer Harry was charging back toward Basil and Maud, with the 2 prison guards following hastily behind.
Oh, Christ!
Maud gritted through his teeth.
We're toast! Hurry up, Laz!
Shrieked one of Lazarus's offsiders.
Now listen to me very carefully if you want to get out of here with your heart still beating.
Lazarus's voice became stern and cold.
Oh, I'm all ears.
Hastened Basil eagerly.
See the watchtower in the distance?
Lazarus turned his gaze to a huge stone tower, laden with armed guards.
I see it. You need to get to that, and you'll see a wire cable that runs all the way down to the water's edge.
Lazarus rushed.
Follow it until you get to the big oak tree.
Officer Harry picked up the wire receiver, shouted a few words, and then slammed it down, storming toward Basil and Maud. They were running out of time.
Look around the oak tree, and you'll see a rope with a rock tied to the end of it.
Lazarus anxiously continued.
Pull it hard. You'll see the rest for yourselves. What? What is it?
Questioned Basil in a rush.
What's there?
Lazarus turned to Basil.
They would have never let you off Fort Denison.
Basil's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly the exit door flew open, and their worst nightmare had come true. Senior Guard Stented pounded toward them, his face twisted like warped metal. He plowed past Officer Harry, thumping toward Basil so hard that he almost cracked the concrete beneath his boots.
Oh my God, no! God!
Maud screeched from behind Basil.
No! Hey, if they catch you now, they won't let you go.
Lazarus stood to his feet, glaring at Basil.
You know too much. Know too much?
Basil mumbled desperately.
Know too much about what? Just run, goddamn you!
Snapped Lazarus. Stanton, resembling a monster with every stride he took, rolled toward Basil and Maud like a wrath of darkness.
Oh, I've always lived life on the edge,
Basil stated.
And I'm not about to change that now.
He grabbed Maud by the scuff of his collar, and they both ran for their lives, heading back the way they came. They tumbled through the exit door and saw a very startled Officer Bartholomew filing away some papers.
In God's name, what the hell is going on here?
He cried in shock, stumbling back against the filing cabinet. Without answering, Basil grabbed a floor lamp next to his desk and smashed it through the window, with glass shattering everywhere. He and Maud both threw their sacks through the shards of glass and dived out of the window into the box hedge, just as Stanton shot through Officer Bartholomew's door like a bullet. Covered in glass shards, Basil and Maud scrambled to their feet and sped off through the penitentiary gardens, listening as the sirens blared out over the island.
This way! Here!
Basil shouted, pulling Maud by his arm, weaving through the shrubs and bushes.
How are we going to get past those bastards with the guns up there?
Puffed Maud, glancing up over the tower.
Just run!
Cried Basil.
We'll worry about that later! We're not even in prison and we're already bloody escaping one!
Maud yelled, flailing behind.
How the fuck does this work out? Christ! Just shut up and run, will you?
The stomping and the shouting of the prison guards was very close behind, and Basil and Maud wouldn't dream of slowing down, even if their legs gave out. They had never run so fast in their lives, and Basil knew that if they were caught, that they'd very much end up inside with old Lazarus and Dirty Charles. That's, of course, if they don't get a double barrel in their backsides first.
I don't want to end my holiday in the bloody clinker!
Maud fretted, gaining momentum and zipping past Basil.
My holiday hasn't even damn well started yet! Control yourself!
Basil angrily panted.
You're gonna get us both bloody killed!
To their slight advantage, dusk had befallen Fort Denison, making it more difficult for the two to be spotted. All they had to do was keep low and avoid the blinding floodlights beaming from the watchtower. Sneaking toward it, they frantically searched for the wire cable.
There it is!
Basil whispered with relief, noticing the dangling wire cable through the shallow darkness of the skies.
Lazarus was right. Now all we have to do is follow it to the water.
The adrenaline pumping through their veins was thicker than molasses.
But how?
Maud wondered, holding his ribs.
How are we going to do this? On my signal,
Basil glanced up at the watchtower.
we run. But look how quick that light's moving.
Maud argued.
It's like lightning. It's so damn quick. Oh, get positive for fuck's sake.
Snapped Basil. The floodlight moved away from the gardens and shone across the other side of the island.
Now!
Basil whispered loudly. The two of them snuck along the cable line, down to the water's edge. The big, overgrown trees up ahead looked promising, and Basil couldn't wait to get there.
The trees!
Basil hissed.
Head for the trees!
They had drawn close to the water's edge, but the endless sound of thudding boots and loud voices through the gardens was not allowing for the two of them to relax for even a second, until at last they had come to a massive tree with its thick branches so big that they grew along the ground.
This must be the oak tree,
Maud exclaimed, immediately dropping his sack and leaning over the branch to catch his breath.
Are you mad?
Basil cried incredulously.
Now's not the time for a break. Look for the rope. All right.
Maud protested, wiping the sweat from his dripping forehead.
Come on, hurry!
Basil panted, darting his eyes frantically amongst the branches.
We're running out of time. We've got to find it. We have to.
They searched and searched around the many branches when they suddenly heard an odd sound. They both whipped their heads over their shoulders, tremendously startled. Their breath sliced their throats immediately.
You thought you could outrun someone like me, eh?
Just hearing the sound of that dark, raspy voice drained the blood from every inch of their bodies. Shining within a dim torchlight was none other than their ultimate worst nightmare. The monster himself, Senior Guard Stanton.
Oh,